Hello students, welcome back to a new session after vacation. Today we are going to start chapter 11, Light, Shadows and Reflections. We see many objects around us, colorful and different. On the way to school, we see things like buses, cars, cycles, trees, animals and sometimes flowers. How do you think we see all these objects? Think of the same places at night. If there were completely dark, what will you see? Suppose you go inside a completely dark room. Are you able to see any object in the room? But when you light a candle or a torch, you can see the object present in the room, isn't it? Without light, things cannot be seen. Light helps us to see objects. Children, we see many things around us during the daytime. The same things will be there at night also. But at night, because of darkness, we cannot see any of these things. You just think you are entering a dark room at night. You will not be able to see any things inside the room. But if you are using a lighted candle or a torch, you will be able to see all the things inside the room. That means light helps us to see the object. And we cannot see any object in the absence of light, or in darkness we will not be able to see any object. We can see an object only in presence of light, and light helps us to see the object. Then you may be thinking, during daytime from where we get the light? During daytime we get the light of the sun. Because of the sunlight we can see the object during the daytime. At night, we do not get sunlight, so we have to opt for, or we have to use other sources of light, either the electric bulb or the torch or the lighted candle. The torch bulb is an object that gives out light of its own. The sun is another familiar object that gives its own light. During day, its light allows us to see objects. Objects like a sun that give out or emit light of their own are called luminous objects. This is what I explain now. The torch or the electric bulb or the lighted candle, these are all the sources that produce light. Now, what are called sources of light? An object that can produce light is called a luminous object, or it is also called a source of light. Any object that can emit light, emit means produce, that it can give out light is called a luminous object, or it is also called a source of light. And these sources of light can be divided into two groups: natural source of light and man-made or artificial sources of light. The sun, stars, then there is an insect called a glowworm or firefly. These are all examples of natural sources of light. You know, sun is a star, right? Like a sun, other stars also have their own light. Then firefly, these are the examples of natural sources of light. On the other hand, there are many other sources like the candle, torch, bulb, etc. They are made by man. They are called man-made sources of light. So for seeing an object, either we have to use the natural source of light, or we have to use the light from the artificial source of light. Okay, children, I think you understood what are luminous objects. An object that it can give out light, or that it can emit light, that it can produce light, is called a luminous object. Now, what about object like a chair, a painting or a shoe? We see this when light from a luminous object like the sun or the torch or the electric light falls on this object, and when they travel towards our eyes. So other objects which cannot produce the light, they are called a non-luminous object. And we can see a non-luminous object only in presence of a luminous object. That means we have to use the light of the luminous object to see an object that cannot produce the light. Now we will see about transparent, opaque and translucent object. Recall your grouping object as opaque, transparent or translucent in chapter 4. If we cannot see through an object at all, it is an opaque object. If you are able to see clearly through an object, it is allowing light to pass through it. It is called a transparent object. There are some objects through which we can see, but not very clearly. Such objects are called a translucent object. You have already learned in chapter 4 about the transparency of the substances or the object. On the basis of transparency, object can be divided into three groups: transparent, translucent, and opaque. What are transparent objects? An object that allows the light to pass through it, or an object through which we can see very clearly. They are called a transparent object. For example, air. Air is transparent. Clean water. These are the examples of transparent object. You can see the distant building or you can see a distant tree through air. You know air is everywhere, right? Around us, air is there. Still we can see the different object through the air because air is transparent. Same way, you take a bucket of water and put a coin or a pencil in the water. You will be able to see clearly the coin or the pencil through the water because the clean water is transparent and only the clean water is transparent. Muddy water is translucent or it will be opaque only. So air, clean water, plain glass, etc. are examples of transparent object and we can see the object clearly through the transparent object. But there are some objects like a cardboard, brick, wood, your textbook, etc., through which we will not be able to see other object. Such objects are called a opaque object. The object which does not allow the light to pass through it is called an opaque object. Now there are some other objects through which we will be able to see but not clearly. Why? Because it allows the light to pass through it but not the complete light, not the whole light. It allows a part of the light to pass through it. Such objects are called a translucent object. For example, the tracing paper or the oily paper, muddy water, etc. are the example of translucent object. So then I am revising the point one more time. On the basis of transparency of the substances, we can classify the substance into three groups: transparent, translucent, and opaque. The object which allows the light to pass through it completely are called a transparent object. Example, glass, plain glass, clean water, air. Then the object that allows the light to pass through it partially are called a translucent object. Example, tracing paper, oil paper, muddy water, etc. Then the object which do not allow the light to pass through it. They are called opaque objects like a cardboard, book, woods, hard plastic, etc. Thin plastic is transparent. Plastic, I think, coming under all the three groups. If the plastic is very thin, it will be transparent. And if it is little, somewhat thick, then it will be translucent. There are some hard plastic which will be opaque. Now there is an activity. Look around you and collect as many objects as you can. An eraser, plastic scale, pen, pencil, notebook, single sheet of paper, tracing paper or a piece of cloth. Try to look at something far away through each of these objects. Is light from the faraway object be able to travel to your eyes through any of the objects? Record your observations in the table as shown in table 11.1. We see that the given object or material could be transparent, translucent, or opaque depending on whether it allows the light to pass through it completely, partially, or not at all. Is an activity given to you. You collect some object from your surroundings like an eraser, plastic scale, pen, pencil, notebook, single sheet of paper, tracing paper, a piece of cloth, etc. and try to see the object through them. And on the basis of that, you can classify the taken object as either transparent, translucent, or opaque. And eraser, through eraser, you will not be able to see any object, so it will be opaque. Plastic scale, that already I told you, plastic, whether it is transparent or translucent depends on the thickness of the plastic. Very thin plastic is transparent, so the new plastic scale we can say it will be somewhat transparent. But if the the plastic scale is dusty or dirty, or if it is very old, then you will not be able to see through the plastic scale clearly, and then we can include that plastic scale in translucent object. Pen also opacally, pencil, notebook, these are all opaque. A single sheet of paper that if it is very thin, it will be translucent, otherwise it will be opacally. Tracing paper is translucent, and a piece of cloth that also depends on what material the cloth is made. So you collect some object from your surrounding and classify them as transparent, translucent, or opaque. Children, today I am winding up and we will be continuing the lesson in the next session.